The topic of today's discussion is smart energy. The topic is quite a pressing one. It is a prospective topic, and there's no doubt that today we discuss the real future of the energy sector. Yet, there is a question: is this future a Russian future, and if so, in what aspects, and during what time? These and other questions are those we would address today during our discussion with the participants of our society, and I would ask the participants of the round table to introduce themselves and tell about their experience in smart energy, please. Oleg Bertsovsky. I'm operational director of the energy efficient technologies of Skolkovo. Before that, I worked in RAO-ES, Russia, then in Siberian Coal Company. That's why I always met various aspects of energy, especially in generation, and now we're working with everything connected with improving of the energy efficiency and all projects connected with the whole chain from generation to transmission to energy efficiency of final consumption. So smart energy, this topic which is connected with energy efficiency, it is very close to me. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. My name is Alexey Zhikharev, and I work in IFC. I'm an expert of investor and government relations. And I work in a program that was planned for 5 years, but we managed to extend it, and we will function up to 2016. And our main aim of our program is the emergence of enough of necessary volume of renewable energy in Russia, and the provision of the necessary place in the energy balance of renewable energy, and we promote the regulators of the development of the legislative basis, and try to help investors in looking for optimal technical solutions expedient to be introduced at the territory of the Russian Federation. And we also carry out consultations to our potential investors. And as Oleg, I've worked for 5 years in RAO-ES of Russia before I started working with renewable energy, and before that I worked in a consulting company. I consider distributed energy as from the point of view of smart energy. Now we know that there is not enough attention to this topic in Russia. Last year, at the wholesale market, there was a result. We had a decree by the government of the Russian Federation that would provide for the introduction of renewable energy at the wholesale market, nearly 6 gigawatts. As for retail market, that partly covers distributed generation and isolated zones. We don't have such results there, unfortunately, and we're waiting for the second year for a decree on retail market. But there are still questions that our executive bodies cannot give an answer to. And I would like to note that notwithstanding the fact that distributed generation and renewable energy in Russia are not developing to full extent and receive poor attention, and the regulator considers the distributed generator as a risk, not a positive effect for the energy system. In any way, we see that the development is underway. We can estimate that now in some zones, in isolated and within the framework of energy system, there are projects. And they arise not because there are certain support measures, but against this fact. And we would like them to happen due to support. I think that Alexei raised some discussion questions during his introduction, but I would like to know these topics once again, that the attention that is given to smart energy and to this distributed energy that we will talk about today. And Russia has some conditions that should be taken into account. Because we have many arguments in the development for the development, but let's continue the introduction.
I'm the director of Energy Systems Center at Skoltech. Skoltech is a new private graduate university, which I think many of you have heard about. And one of the areas of our interest is smart grids. Before joining Skoltech about 2 months ago, I was with Durham University in the UK. In the UK and generally in the West, smart grids is a very important topic, and I participated in a number of smart grid demonstration projects funded by the UK government, many multi-million projects. Well, the driver in the UK is renewable generation, is wind. You have to do things smartly because sometimes wind blows, sometimes wind doesn't blow, and doing traditional things will not sort out the problems. That will increase additional costs. Here in Russia, as was mentioned by my predecessor, the driver is not really renewables. There are some other drivers, so it is less of a push from the demand, but it's more of a pull because there are some technologies around, new technologies which can be used in order to run the system smartly. It means in order to minimize the cost of running them. Here in Skoltech we participate in a number of smart grids projects. It's not only distributed generation. One project, for example, is Northeast Asia Energy Ring, which this is a study which looks at the viability of connecting Russia with Mongolia, China, Korea and Japan, and a number of smart grid solutions which could be employed. Another project is in Ruski Island, which we are getting involved in. So basically what I'm looking is how to import my Western experience in smart grids into the Russian context.
Добрый день.
Good afternoon. My name is Igor Kozhukovsky, and I am Deputy General Director of the federal state-funded institution Russian Energy Agency, and I'm co-chairman of Small Distributed Energy Technology Platform. A few words about the topic of small distributed energy. It emerged on our agenda 10 years ago, but still, it shifted to an organized process. It started working from the beginning of our technological program in 2011. The platform unites over 200 enterprises, organizations, scientific institutes, producers of equipment of small generation, the companies that specialize in this kind of business. And I'd like to say that small distributed energy turned into a prevailing vector of the development in the energy of developed countries, not only some kind of not used field. It emerged and started to move forward due to innovations and due to the emergence of a spectrum of new technologies of small dimensions, and it is also an engine for growth in the energy sector. And it leads to the fact that the energy changes its system from a centralized system. It shifts to a network intellectual mode. And here we think it is very important and perspective. That's it for the beginning. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Dmitry Holkin, a director for intellectual power systems and a member of architectural committee on smart energy that's been working within the framework of the Russian networks. I would like to represent two positions here. One, the position of architectural committee and scientific center within the as the first position. For 2 years of work of the architectural committee, we tried to answer one question: why Russia needs a smart energy? Why does it need smart grid? Does it differ from foreign experience? Do we have any special characteristics? And as within the framework of my second activity, we solved the creation of new components, the systems of technological management of new generation. And as an initial idea, I would like to say that always when we discuss energy sector, it's necessary to understand that we are now at the turn of the energy mode. And when we say smart energy, we unite two polar substances: old energy sector, generative assets, mainline networks, and post-industrial energy, distributed generation. Consumers with various consumers, and the intellectual character is different because in different questions we have different aims, and that's just an ordinary mistake. What will be the saving when smart energy comes? And if we talk about old mode energy, we can discuss this issue, but when we're talking about new generation energy, we're not asking the right question. In the first place, it's efficiency, and after that, that's accessibility, providing high-quality services for businesses right now. And I would like us to understand the difference between two energy sphere modes, and based on that, in this discussion.
And I'm the CEO of the Israeli Smart Energy Association. This is an industry association with two goals in mind. First of all, to accelerate and promote deployment of smart energy solutions in Israel itself. Israel is a unique country because we're an energy island. We're not connected to any other country. But the other goal of the association is to take the Israeli innovation and create connections and links to the other world. For those who don't know, Israel is a very small country, so the whole idea is really to build those sort of connections. When we look on smart energy, and I want to relate to what was said just before me, I think that we have to take a very holistic approach. We have to look not only on the technologies, because typically in discussions about smart energy, we get into technology discussions about renewables, about distributed generation. We have to take the most holistic approach that we can, because we like to look at it very similarly to the changes that went over the telecommunications over the last 30 years. And I look on the audience here, many here are too young to remember, but about 20 years ago, those who may remember, even if you were kids, almost no one used emails. 10 years ago, everyone used emails. Today, my kids tells me that emails is only for old people. So changes are very, very frequent, and 10 years ago, almost no one had smartphones. Today, I'm doing everything with my smartphone. We think that the business model for energy is going to change, and you can see today very large utilities talking about business models, and this is a much bigger change than only the technology, and the technology should naturally be innovative enough to support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Спасибо. Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I am Leonid Sorkin, Vice President for Government Relations from Honeywell. Honeywell is a high technology corporation. It has 140,000 employees in the world. We produce tools and instruments of automatization, chemical materials that create chemical technology. We also produce energy installations and work on the development of energy-saving technology. In Russia, we have very high numbers of representation in all segments of industry, in buildings and installations and in transportation sphere. We have strong connections with universities. We have our own department at the Moscow Physical and Technical University, which I had. On the topic of energy topics, they go through all segments of our activity. First of all, within the context of energy saving, We're talking about energy saving in industry, in transport, in buildings and construction. And I would like to have today's discussion touch not only generation or networks, but also energy saving. Thank you very much. We have a wonderful combination of foreign experience and Russian experience, applied experience, knowledge experience in regulation of the market, in attracting investment. And I would like to know that today we have our expert Ilya Pavlov, venture partner of Bright Capital, that will also help us in our discussion in attracting investment, and that's an important sphere, you know. So first of all, let's discuss the core of the question. Nearly everyone talked about distributed generation, and this issue is a core issue, but there are different points of view on it. Russian energy sector was created based on efficiency principles. And yet, according to some factors, maybe due to lack of investment, we have a situation when the volume of losses in the system generally can be compared with the scales of energy of some country, for example, Poland. Many people see distributed generation as a solution to this problem. Some say that no, this approach is completely cannot be used in Russian energy sector. Let's discuss whether you support one or other position. Igor, maybe you will begin. I will begin this discussion with pleasure. For a long time, I worked with the strategy of the development of the sector. We formulated various general schemes adopted by the government. And I understand that a centralized energy sector that is formulated in the Soviet era, and our Russian history added something to its development. It reached the threshold of its efficiency, and it is connected with high losses in networks. It is connected with low fuel use, thermal efficiency. That is, it is connected with the complexity of the management of this centralized system, and I mean the whole our regulation mechanism. It is inefficient. We have the monitoring equipment deficiency and deficiency of functioning of market mechanism. That is a complex mechanism adopted by the state. And these factors led to the fact that our tariffs and prices for energy by central energy sector, they turn out to be high. A centralized energy sector frequently unable to meet the demand and the characteristics of demand that some consumers require. Some pay for high reliability, others pay for are ready to pay at low prices, and centralized energy sector is unable to differentiate it and take it into account. And the last thing is investment. The investment part in the development of large networks, investment into the construction of large-scale generation with 5 for 7 years, that's construction, and 10 years of investment return. We don't have any prognosis of socio-economic development, an official one that would have a horizon of more than 2030. And how do we plan the risks of this great investment? The investment in energy sector, they are quite immense, and they cannot be managed. That is why small distributed energy is developing quickly. They have quicker construction, quicker investment return, and distributed basis for investment. These are not 10 state companies. These are tens of thousands of distributed investors. Each of them take their own risks, does not push these risks to those who surround it. So the investments are limited by it. Yes. And I support your thesis that high losses in networks is one of the factors. But there's a wide range of factors that push for the development of distributed energy. That would. Do you agree, dear participants? Is there any alternative? Oleg, please. I will agree with that, but I would like also to note that previously we've seen an effect of scale in the construction of large-scale energy plants, and the cost of a kilowatt for large plants was justified. But now, with the development of the construction of small of distributed generation, this effect went away, and the cost of construction per 1 kilowatt can be compared with the construction of large plants. And here I think the question is mostly of economy in each case. I wouldn't say that we should completely change the paradigm and instead of large plants build distributed generation plants or just work with large plants only. It seems to me that there are cases when distributed generation has its advantages, and we should develop technology, especially when we have isolated zones or zones with poor connection with united system. Here we don't have any questions, but there's another problem with reservation and reliability, and that's an important problem. Yes, and here if we talk about distributed generation that is joined to united system, here we solve the reservation and reliability problem. And here we go to other question connected with a smart grid, with intellectual adaptive electric networks that must work with a number of sources. Yes, we will discuss smart grid after that. But in the topic of distributed generation, you would like to add something, Janusz?
Yes, I'd like to comment on speaker on the left. There's no discussion about the facts stated. However, I would like to perhaps compare the Russian power system as a big tanker, which has been on the course for about 8 years or so, and now you suddenly try to change the course of the big tanker. It takes quite a lot of effort in order to move from big centralized power stations, which the system has always been producing to very good effect, into small generation. Now, if you look, and it takes time, it needs effort, and it needs incentives. How to do it, who should pay for it? Now, if you look at the distributed generation, of course, smart grids are not only distributed generation, but if we just for the moment consider distributed generation, the main driver for the distributed generation in the West were renewables, which are heavily subsidized. There was a lot of money going into development of the distributed renewable generation. Who will subsidize distributed generation in this country? I understand there's development of distributed generation, but that is due to cross subsidies between the domestic tariffs and the industrial tariffs. Some of the industry goes off grid. So apart from the microgrids, those isolated zones which are off the main grid, where obviously there is a big need for distributed generation from the definition, but I'm talking about the main grid out question that need. For example, one of the important questions regarding to smart grids, which is complementary to distributed generation, is demand response. We've had a workshop organized last week on demand response at Skoltech, where I brought Western experts to talk about it. And we have identified a number of barriers, which is, for example, the market is one-sided in this country. It's only generation is participated. How demand will participate in this in this market. So basically my main point is, who are the really drivers which would drive developments in the distributed generation in this country? I don't see them to be as strong here as they are in Russia, in the West.
Спасибо большое за очень последовательное.
Thank you very much for your consecutive statement, and you identified the problem very well, and I think that this problem exists. Perhaps Dmitry could comment on the drivers, supplement to those which Igor has mentioned, emphasizing two problems which were identified by us. The first one, the lack of the sources of distributed energy, and the problem of reserve, who is distributing the load between the other participants when the main part goes for distributed energy. The question of making reserves and of topology of energy system which exists in Russia is identified identifies one emphasis which hasn't been mentioned. Usually we talk about losses in grids, but now we have inefficient use of generation capacities, 52%. And the about 50% of use of power grids capacities. So it's a general practice, and perhaps we are not so different from other countries, but that's the point, that's the problem of centralized major power grids, because we have to reserve radial structures, and we have to reserve each element in those structures, and that's why how we yield 50%. Each time we need to double capacity, taking into regard the topology. And I would like to talk first about smart grids. The first question, what's the driver for a smart power grid? In Russia, it's the driver from the point of view of the challenge. We have a lot of capacities which can be used. That's the first point. And the second point is that we have climate and geographic conditions and finance system which identify the high costs of construction of the system. It's 2-3 times more expensive than in Europe. That's why we need to protect the capacities we have and to implement new capacities very targetedly, and target resources are distributed generation, and those consumers who need it will follow the challenges, and there are huge numbers of import of generators, turbines, which enable us to give distributed generation. It's not renewables, that's gas first and foremost, but it turned out to be a very huge campaign all over the country, and it's the challenge, and this capacity is a challenge, and we need to use it efficiently. There are trends which are defined by major consumers, and of course we need to have an ideal picture, and how can we do it? I think that's the issue of regulators or the balance of power in the market, but if we make the energy work in an optimal mode, taking into regard the basic load, then we will be able to generate cheaper energy, and distributed energy may be regarded as a source which enables us to play at our peak or semi-peak, and it will guarantee the quality of it will guarantee the combination of all traditional energy and new distribution energy. So I think there is no conflict between these two approaches of electricity generation. So, Elad, what's your point of view from your world experience?
I think that you will hear me saying a few times that we need to have a holistic approach, and when we're talking about distributed generation...
As always.
Yeah, it's always, right? Because I think the importance is really to understand the driver, as we said before, and what I've seen in all the countries I've seen so far, the major driver for both distributed generation or changing the whole energy mechanism and moving into, we can call it smart grid or not, never mind, but a different mechanism. One was economy, second was have more robust or survivability of the network, and the third was green initiatives. And in most cases those are those three, just the priorities are different. Eventually, if you don't have the economy or robustness of the network in place, it's very tough to drive really major changes just to be more greener. It's not maybe nice to say it, but that's the truth. And with the economy, we have to have here a broad look, because sometimes just distributed generation or just one piece won't be enough. What we did, for example, we did a cost-benefit analysis in Israel, and because we had the same issues of who is going to gain from it, we said let's look at it on the market economy. So never mind if this is the government, if those are the consumers, as a holistic approach of what would the distributed generation, for example, contribute to the local economy. And with this you can include, for example, on the robustness of the network. If you have failures in some places, someone mentioned here microgrids. In California, they're looking to build now microgrids because if you have natural disasters, then you have some blockages of power blockages. This also incurs some cost. You have the cost of having redundancy. You have a cost of having to transmit electricity over long areas. So you have, first of all, to really understand what is the driver, and once you understand the driver, to do the whole cost-benefit analysis. I think that this will solve eventually the investment issue, because from this you can see how much you save, if you save, and in most cases you do save, and then who should be the entity that pays for this. And you don't have to start, the nice thing about distributed generation is you don't have to start with mass deployment. You can start with either campuses or cities, and you can learn as you grow with this.
Спасибо большое, Elad.
So thank you very much, Elad. I think if we are talking about these three drivers, it's there is no unanimous opinion that all the three are present in the Russian economy. And if we talk about ecology of the energy generation, we don't have any renewables. And talking about the Alexis presentation, we see that of course we need support, and the participants of the market do not strive to invest and do not develop the distributed generation in the scales we'd like it to have. And so, Alexei, can you comment on the former statements, because our speakers talked about investment, and Oleg has also said the investment in major projects, which is unrealistic in the Russian reality. So some small scales projects could be the decision. So could you comment on the financial aspect of the issue?
Yes, I can comment on that, and I would like to know that that it would be wrong to say that private investors do not move to this sphere. There is movement to this sphere, but unfortunately not because of the stimuli given by the state, but against the situation that is we have in the market. And we're in a situation when we see the generators are discontent that the prices are low. Some are discontented with anything else, but we see that the final price is quite high to think about their own generation, distributed generation. So there is movement, but frequently it's against the current situation. And the question is not in the paradigm whether it is correct to use distributed energy, or whether general network energy is correct. There's a question how to combine these two parts in the Russian Federation in order to have centralized energy and distributed energy that would remain economically effective in our market. And here is where we have the major problem. We see that the regulators, like system operators, they do not pay a lot of attention to this problem. And we see that there is no analysis of effects of the introduction of this energy. And we're worried that it can be the same with renewable energy, when first we have a decree of the government with the defined volumes, on the aims of the introduction of renewable energy, and only after more than a year after the decree goes into effect, we have an analysis of the potential of renewable energy. And here we may have the same situation. First, the investors would come and start building these objects, and only after that we will work on the development of regulations, codes, and the provision of security of these objects, and after that introducing these objects to the market system. And I see this problem from this point of view. Thank you very much. Maybe to sum up the distributed generation, I think that from what we've heard during this discussion, this topic does not conflict with traditional generation. It can and may add something to traditional generation. Russia doesn't have such conditions that exist abroad, in particular large share of renewable energy, and accordingly large social demand from the society for eco-generation. So we won't have a large-scale shift, but for sure the movement to this sphere should come forward, and the regulators should create appropriate conditions for that. I would like to add one thing to the comment by one of our speakers about the subsidies and about the fact that renewable energy and any other distributed energy can require additional subsidies. So I think that here we should not be mistaken speaking about additional subsidies in any other energy sector that is different from centralized center. We all see the figures published by the energy agency, International Energy Agency, and there the subsidies into traditional energy in Russia are estimated at 50 billion. And if we say about the load that arise from the introduction of other technologies, here we should understand that we won't have a worse situation. We have the reallocation of subsidies. And to support this fact, I can share my impression. I've heard a digest of news, and there was a meeting in Yakutsk, on the discussion of adding southern part of Yakutia to the Russian network. And as a result of this unification of these markets, we have a new problem. The northern part of Yakutia, there's no cross subsidies possibility, because the southern part goes to market as a generator. And there were figures of increasing tariffs due to this connection of up to 1,000%. And the state says that it understands the problems and is ready to subsidize it from the federal budget. And if there is readiness to go on this subsidizing this inefficient energy, why not we send these subsidies to the smart energy? Leonid, I see you want to comment on that. The one comment was very correct, and the colleagues are true that these two sides should cooperate with each other, centralized and distributed generation, I mean. But unfortunately, that's in theory, and in practice it happens another way. And there's an example. One of the major Russian cities, a major clinical complex, discusses the issue of energy saving, because the energy bill in this hospital is quite high, and one of the solutions is their own generating capacity. And then the centralized supplier says that they will cut this object from the centralized grid. And here, the head of this largest hospital, and we should not forget that we're living in a cold country. So the head should decide whether he should take this responsibility or leave it as well as it is. And then for the energy, he doesn't pay for the energy from his own pocket. He's not responsible. So that's the real life. Igor, please. Leonid, I firmly support your appeal to talk not only about the energy, but about energy efficiency. And the driver of distributed generation is consumer. The consumer wants to save on energy and works with easy measures of energy efficiency. And after that, there's the next step, generation, own generation. He works with solar batteries, their own generating capacity and support. And he sometimes chooses the solution to build his own reserving generation capability and goes to the island regime. And this is a scary factor for the state, for the traditional energy. And that is the reason why they are against, they are afraid to stay without consumers. That's one moment. Another moment that I would like to emphasize, we are not talking about it now, Alex said about the scale effect. And I would argue it didn't go anywhere. You can't fool physics, but this effect is compensated by yet a stronger effect when we shift to mass cogeneration and trigeneration. We go to the growth of using fuel from 30% to 90%, and so no scale effect will resist that. And these are the capabilities that distributed generation give us to work well with energy saving, with heat saving, and provide other services for consumers. And the last thing, as for the integration, distributed energy, if it develops, creates the risks of conflict with a centralized system. And here the main point begins. So what is the position of the state? What is the state politics? Now it is that the state is afraid of such trend. And on one hand, it does not notice it, and on the other hand, it says that self-provision is bad, but you should focus on the creation of technical conditions for integrations, on a legal basis for it, and get maximum use from distributed energy that is in the capability to provide cheap reserves. Okay.
Эффективно вместе, да, и какие, может быть, действия необходимо предпринимать?
So which measures are needed to be implemented for the regulator to provide for efficient energy use? Please, Janusz.
I think this is an important factor. I mean, we are all saying that smart grids, distributed generation are good things for all the reasons which have been mentioned, and there is no discussion about it. However, the question is of actual implementation is difficult. One reason is that from the point of view of utilities, of Russian grids and the system operator, it is relatively easy to run the system in centralized system when with the power generation, with power station they can control and achieve security of supply, which is the main worry, of course, for any utility. Now try to do it that thing, try to tell them, okay, we will have all those benefits from distributed generation, from the smart grids, but they cannot be controlled as easily as big power stations can. So that's why there is always reluctance from traditional utilities against implementation of smart grids, because they have to keep the lights on, and they are not convinced that with smart grid solutions, reliability of solution will be as good as the old one. That's why there is a need for a pilot schemes to convince the system operator, the utilities, Russian grids, that those solutions actually work. And let me give example from the UK I was familiar with. So we mentioned the subsidies to the distributed generation, but also there was a scheme I participated in that British government gave £500 million to a so-called low carbon network fund. And that was solutions to the network operators, distribution network operators and the central network operators, in order to develop smart grid schemes and in order to convince them that they work and the reliability of solution is as good as traditional ones. And the third factor I wanted to mention in terms of drivers and benefits, We say that smart grid solution benefit everyone, but the question is how can those benefits be who should pay for it, and how does distribution so that those benefits are realized? Because under the traditional utility model, when a utility owned generation, transmission, distribution, everything, the solution which they have implemented benefited the company. At the moment, generation is a different company, transmission is a different company, distribution may be again different company, and customers are again different. So we have a problem of a so-called broken supply chain. It means that the smart grid solution benefit different members, different sectors of the supply chain, but the question is who should pay for them so when everyone benefits for them. So there is a need for institutional solutions, which is very strong. How to make sure that everyone contributes to it because everyone benefits from it.
Спасибо.
Thank you very much. Perhaps any other comments?
I wanted to refer to, as you said, that utilities today are a bit concerned about how they will control everything and do they have the relevant technologies. I think that's, the discussion we have today show we have or not distributed generation in Russia. If we look at it probably 10 years from now, would sound more or less a discussion, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, should I have or not have a mobile phone? So today, in some countries where the power network is open, they need to ensure that they remain competitive. So in other countries where it's a monopoly or state-owned, they don't have to look at this. But still, it doesn't matter because the drivers are there, and eventually, you need to fulfill completely different needs than we had 150 years ago. And it's just like as this morning in the plenary session, people were talking about alternative vehicles. So we can't expand the roads more and more and more and more. Eventually they will be blocked. The same goes with energy. And if we'll continue to use the same technologies, eventually, never mind, even if you don't have to compete with other power utilities, you won't be able to meet the needs of the market, and the market won't be able, especially we're here at an innovation conference, won't be able to innovate because we have different needs. I'll give you one example. We're talking about electric vehicles. Today, if you're building a large building, then the power utility knows they have like 3 years or 2 years to prepare because they're going to need to provide a lot of electricity in this place. Now imagine that you have tomorrow 20 million electric vehicles here and you have, I don't know, a big match or anything that 200,000 people are driving to one location and they need to refill their cars. Today we have no way to fulfill this need, and we have completely different needs today, and they will evolve. I can't imagine what needs we'll have 10 years from now. I don't think anyone can, we can forecast. So the need for distributed generation is one piece. By the way, I didn't mention before, my background is from IT, and the tools that the utility needs in order to manage it exist today, and it's just a matter of starting to adopt it, and they can have complete control over distributed generation, just as those are centralized generation.
Спасибо. Как раз Эллад отметил, что на самом деле действительно проблема.
Yes, I think it's a comprehensive problem and there are a lot of solutions which are ready to be implemented. Perhaps we should shift to this topic. Perhaps Oleg could tell us about the smart energy on the whole, its aspects, and which aspects can be implemented in Russia in the long-term perspective and in the short-term perspective. So I would like you to comment on this topic. So here we should divide the discussion in two parts. Are we talking about smart energy on the whole or about some aspects? Because we have discussed smart energy today and it includes both smart grids and they are mentioned lots of times, and technology of distributed generation, and we can also understand that technologies of monitoring and technologies of proper sales techniques are also under discussion. We had a conference not long time ago, and we had a lot of power companies, and Dmitry took part there, and we discussed key topics on the conjunction point of these technologies, and we enumerated different elements of smart energy. And so, can you enumerate the most priority elements for the Russian Federation in short-term perspective and in long-term perspective? So I think that possibly I would emphasize several aspects. If we talk about short-term perspectives, and things which are important, and a lot of companies speak about it. These include smart metering technologies development, so it's distance collection of information, not from final objects for consumers, but also from the large power grid to monitor its condition, transparent accountability system, multi-tariff system. So that's the first element. And here we have traditional problem, the communication system, which could have work in the scale of the whole power grid in online mode, and also collection and processing of a large database. So these are big data technologies which are quite popular now, and I can say that in the short term they can be implemented from the point of view of intellectual capacity. So I'm not talking about everything, but I'm talking only about integration and development aspects. And if we talk about medium run perspective, we can talk about digital technologies, digital substations, transformators of current, and in long-term perspective, this can be implementation of and transition to multi-agent grids, where each transformator can be an agent, and it can take into account a huge number of generating resources, and consumers can also act as consumers of generators at one and the same time. So that's demand response techniques and integration of network accumulators, which are not used now actively because of their price. And so I think we need to automatically monitor and detect faults in the system. So I think it's a full-fledged power grid, but it's a perspective of a long-term character. It's hard to say how many years it would take, because we need to implement it step by step. We can't say that tomorrow we will meet the era of living when we have only smart grids around us. So the transition will be made step by step, and it has already begun. And we can't talk about the complete implementation, but the perspective accounts for 10-20 years. If we talk about the full-fledged smart grid, which doesn't exist in the world in a complete way, because we have different elements implemented, but it's not the holistic system. So please, Dmitry. I would comment from the point of view of what we are doing in this direction within the framework of federal company of Russian grids. I would emphasize 3 zones of implementation of solutions. The first one contains the issues of optimization of grids. This include crucial issues of the loss decrease in the grids, and also the issues of digital substations, and also automatically managed substations. These are the topics which are discussed at the moment. That's the first zone. The second zone was also identified by Oleg. It's smart measuring. And I'd also like to say that it's quite perspective for us to look at the accountability as the service for consumers, because account and measuring is regarded as collection of data and analysis of losses, but it's not very interesting for the consumers themselves. It's very important to find data about the account and new opportunities for consumers. And the third direction deals with the issues of capacity use. It's the support of distributed generation in the grid, and the questions connected with the management of load and demand response, and also the system which is specific for Russia perhaps, it's redistribution of capacities which is fixed for the consumer. In last half a year, it has been discussed broadly, and if we manage to invent secondary markets of network of grids capacity, it would enable us to eliminate the narrow places in the system. So please, perhaps some comments. Please, Leonid. I completely agree that with everything which has been said about smart grids or intellectual measurings, but I'd like to attract your attention to the fact that smart energy is also an energy efficient consumer, because in this in this chain, we also talk about innovations of generation capacities of network companies, but we forget that innovation also implies an energy efficient consumer, because smart energy is an energy efficient consumer. If we talk about the state level, it's the energy efficiency of the GDP. And what can we talk at the moment about? Energy efficiency in industry. There are some innovation approaches. For example, I have heard we have an oil processing and petrochemical industry which are very well developed, and they have high energy capacity and power intensity, and we have modern control systems and management systems, and we also can talk about such an industry as automobile industry. Today, during the plenary session with Vice Prime Minister, President of automobile industry of Russia took the floor, and I know that the initial price of the car has the share of energy costs for the production of the car, and we need to understand if there is a way to decrease these expenses using innovative methods, multifaceted methods, isolation, intellectual buildings, and of course they exist, and we need to understand that there are huge losses, energy losses in civil buildings. During the plenary session, President Sibur talked about it, and he showed the examples, and there are innovative decisions in this regard. Earlier we called it smart house, and now we see the titles as connected home or online home, but all these measures enable us to supplement and to develop the system and to have an energy efficient consumer, and so we will have innovative solutions for both sides. So I think that we have looked at the problem from a point of view of generators and consumers, regulators, but I want to supplement the picture with the companies with private capital. Because there are small-scale investors and large-scale investors. So we have our expert, Ilya Pavlov, who please will take the floor.
Ilya, please join us. What are the prospects? Where do you see the opportunities in the market based on your experience? I would say about the following thing. All the cases that we consider in our practice of investment, they are aimed to use considerable millions of dollars invested in some company technology would allow us to make a rush forward in the market, that the company would be able to change the situation, the current situation, and these situations these hotspots in the Russian market or in the international market. We monitor them in order to invest money to the companies that solve these problems. And what problems? If we talk about what we have today in Russia, when we talk about distributed generation, I had an impression that today distributed generation is not something that we have in full extent in Russia in renewable energy sector. We have a lot of distributed generation, and the money that is spent by RAOES in the east, these are billions of rubles. And today we have a solution that allow us to optimize gas and diesel generation with cheap means. You get billions of profit. These are the interesting things we take into account. And on the other hand, if we talk about distributed generation or smart grids, an important thing is maintenance and control of the installations that we currently have. When we talk to colleagues that want in the Far East, in Yakutia, in Sakhalin, to install distributed generation, all face a problem that installing one time, then you won't be able to bring in the maintenance board because the conditions are such. And one of the solutions now are the current projects that we have in products that we have in the market. For example, forecasting based on what happens today, what will happen with some or other turbine in a year or 2 or 3. And today's products are very down to earth. But if we make some modifications, we can see the effect at once, and a huge effect. And if we talk about the near future for Russia and for the world, we are looking at the trends that go 10 years forward in order to understand where we will have the next development. An important thing, as the colleagues mentioned, is the behavior of final consumer, what the consumer does, how can he earn money. And now looking at 30 billion sensors throughout the world, these are terabytes of data. We have small utilities, generating companies and net companies that can work with this data. And that's a complicated, complex problem. But currently, we have a solution. We have O-Power company that billion IPO, multi-billion IPO in April. They are doing an easy thing that can be applied both in Russia and throughout the world. They're working with companies, with utility companies, and they are looking how consumer that has a smart meter or not, he can measure data once a month, it doesn't matter, and aggregating this data, aggregating data on weather, on the situation in the city, a lot of data. They give out recommendations to consumers how to behave, how can he save money, and they tell them that they, for example, consume 2 times more, and their energy. 2 times more energy for a refrigerator than neighbors, for example, and that is the best motivator for the majority of people. That allows now both consumers and large generators save millions, and everything. We have everything today, and in the near future of large energy sector, in 10-15 years, the colleague gave example with mobile phones. We have a lot of tariffs, a lot of personalized work with consumer. We're going there. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Janusz, so you heard about the perspective we have in Russia now. On the prospect of the Russian market, how do you think, what are the solutions that can be used in long terms and in short terms and medium terms based on the international experience?
Regarding the Russian market, I'll just leave it to the comments of people who know more than me about it. I just want to make one point regarding your last point and also Elad's point about the consumers and engaging consumers. And Elad used this as example of a smartphone and how smartphone changed the way we do our telecommunication. Now, I'm afraid energy is different. I mean, the kids use phone all the time because they want to communicate with each other. I don't see somehow kids talking to each other about, oh, my bill is so much and I have managed to decrease it by 10 kopiek and because I switched off the light.
Родители детей это обсуждают, дети не обсуждают.
Well, the parents, well, but there's actually energy is special. Now, the bill, actually energy is relatively cheap compared to the value. And with the value of energy is very high because we cannot live without energy. It's the electricity, heat is absolutely essential to our way of living. And that's why most people consider cost of it relatively low compared to the value it provides. That means, I mean, there are examples of a very sophisticated smart grid solutions in the United States and the UK. And if people do all kinds of things using with their smartphone, manipulating demand, responding to the prices and etc., and they get savings in the range of, let's say, $5 per week, which is equivalent to, I don't know, maybe 2 beers. So would you want to engage in very complicated system in order to save very little money? So that's the point about energy is it's considered so essential that people don't want to mess about it because they don't want to break it. And secondly, the possible savings from engaging in those smart grid solutions for individual customers are relatively small. From the whole country point of view, they can be quite big. And let me just finish with one example. We did some studies which evaluated what would be what were the benefits of using fridges for demand response. Fridges are basically, they can be switched on and off from time to time without disrupting their cycle. And there is a number of trials around the world how they can use for so-called frequency support. It means when there is suddenly you lose power station, frequency goes down, then the fridges could switch off in order to support. And we did a study which calculated that in future, when there is a lot of wind on the British power system and wind comes on and off, so basically frequency is a big problem, the value of frequency support provided by the fridges is higher than the value of the fridge. That means that a system operator would buy you a fridge, would give it free for you, providing that you let it control by the grid. So that, I think, illustrates the point that although the value for each of us individually is small, but combined effect for the system as the whole can be quite big.
Спасибо большое. Уважаемые коллеги, мне бы хотелось открыть дискуссию для вопросов из зала.
I'd like to open the discussion for the questions from the hall, if you don't mind. So we have a microphone in the hall. So do you hear me? Good afternoon. I represent nuclear energy. We don't deal with distributed energy, but in compliance with energy strategy of Russia by 2030, I'm talking about the not modernized strategy. We are to introduce about 107 gigawatts of cogeneration capacity and about 90 gigawatts of net electricity using only non-organic fuel and plus nuclear energy, hydropower stations, and so on. And my question is to Mr. Kozhuhovsky, who dealt with energy strategy. Which will be the percent of distributed energy in making the solutions? I understand the holistic picture, but we talk usually only about autonomous energy, not about distributed. And we've talked a lot about power grids, but where gas grids, which are needed for the sector on the whole to provide gas, coal, how to work with waste, how to conduct waste treatment. So please, how can you answer the question? So, colleagues, the issues are very important. And today, energy strategy has certain positions in which the share of distributed energy is regarded as 15-20% in the long-term perspective. But if we are talking about the future of the share of distributed and centralized energy, we didn't have such discussions before, we didn't have such estimates, and there is a huge demand for them, and state must also provide support. If we talk about gas grids, I defined in my statement the correlation of different types of infrastructure, and of course we have exhausted the optimization of electricity energy. We need to scrutinize the holistic picture of all the sectors, because without that we will suffer losses. Perhaps we don't need to include gas grids or centralized grids in all the regions. We need to understand what's the priority for each home, for each region and district. And I'd like to emphasize the world tendency of development of strategies of development of energy sector is the following. Each new cycle of developing in all the countries is characterized by the fact, and the forecast in each new country is lower than in the previous. And so in this sense, we haven't understood the potential of energy efficiency, and I support Mr. Sorkin that all energy strategies need to be started with adequate estimate of energy efficiency, because we can face negative indicators, not growth but decrease, and so we will meet the need for new generation. So I would like to add I agree that we need to optimize gas grids, but I'd like to add that if we talk about distributed generation, it's connected with local sources of energy, both renewable and some local different kinds of biofuel, and we need to take into account this. So many, perhaps, other questions? I like the question about the priorities of investment, and I think we need it for the development of intellectual energy, and I have some additional comments. Of course, we need to search for the points of maximum added value, but I think that we have missed several facts. First of all, it's crisis connected with virtual power stations. We have the example of the ES. I'd also like to talk about the difficulties we've faced. Some of the colleagues said that it's also the problem of foreign cases, the problem of the power plant, and it's the problem which is the following. We have the divided sales and grids, and I think that the model we have scrutinized, so the benefits from the grids is taken by the sales company, and so we need to have the scheme which will help us to distribute the economic effect from the restructuring, perhaps to some extent. After making the market liberal, we have low rates of changes from the point of view of regulators, and it makes the process more complicated. So we need new conditions and new regulators for business to implement quickly and easily these new potentials. And I'd like to add also about the issue of what Russia is lacking in comparison to other countries. In Russia, we don't have enough attention to the topic of environment. I can't say about the climate change problem because it's not very popular in Russia, because not everyone is well aware of it, because it's an intangible point. But I think this point is tangible for everyone, and I think net energy investment and smart energy investment and additional subsidies are clear for everyone. And of course, subsidies are needed for traditional energy as well, but efficiency can be estimated when we look at the example of China. All of us watch news, and we know that they have a bike competition there, race there, and they have cancelled the race due to the climate conditions and weather conditions, because they were very hazardous for sportsmen. And so we understand that climate and environment issues are very important, and we lack this understanding.
I think which everyone have to understand that when we're talking about energy efficiency, it's going to be a journey, and there's going to be a need for a lot of education. And I absolutely agree with you that just the green initiative is not enough. By the way, it's not enough in most countries. But even the economic issue, you know, Janusz, you've mentioned that private consumers may not relate to energy saving. Let's put that aside. I agree with you, it's a big challenge. But even enterprises, you know, I've seen it in several countries, that large enterprises, I can give you an example, in Israel, they were even given free of charge some systems to reduce their energy, which is, you know, it's simple free money, and they haven't done anything. And when we tried to analyze it, we found out that the person responsible for the energy is one person, and he was not under pressure to cut his costs at the moment. Okay, so why should he start to get into something he doesn't know how it will happen? So there was a need actually to engage the CEOs of the companies and show them there are ways to reduce their overall costs, and they would ask then the energy person. So there is a need for education and customer engagement, and this, I think, is one of the major challenges all around the world, may it be personal consumers or large enterprises, is to see how to engage the customers.
Уважаемые участники круглого стола, я бы
So, dear participants, I'd like you to make some conclusions for the guests. Perhaps think about, we will hear the last question. Can you think about one sentence or one thought which will be the most key for you from your point of view?
Germany, and I'm Edward Handel from Germany, and as you might know, in Germany we have a lot of solar energy in our grid. About 5% of energy is from solar, and the interesting effect is that during daytime, during peak time, this solar adds into the net, and that means we reduce the sharp peaks in the grid. That reduces problems in the grid. So we should always think there are different solutions, but one of the solutions is the big peak at high noon. It can be really reduced by adding solar energy. That's one way to do it.
Спасибо большое за комментарий. В целом, конечно...
Thank you for your comment. I think you're completely right. But if you see our weather is not very sunny, and so solar energy couldn't be quite effective. But we are working in this direction. And I also think that if we're talking about the technologies of energy accumulation, we will be able to solve this problem of the schedule of peaks of loads, but without cheap energy accumulators, Russia can't cope with the situation using only one alternative source. And I would also like to comment on the statement of the German colleague the following way. In Germany, the peak moments of solar during the peak moments for solar systems, the thermal systems do not work at all. And so if we talk, we are not for the hyper support of the alternative resources. We don't want to support only alternative sources and neglect other. And I think it's the point that we need to have some comprehensive solution. We need to find for the solutions and not to look only in one direction. And we've emphasized the problems of electrotransport, and electrotransport can be a tool to solve the problems of the peaks in order not to bring one kind of sources into standstill at the moment when the another is used. And of course, technologies of energy saving are very important, and they are very actively developing. And I think that we need a comprehensive approach to the situation.
Скажу две таких завершающих.
And I would like to voice another idea that's continuing the words of Dmitry Halking about the retail markets and the necessity to improve these markets. It should be noted that our retail market is the level of the subjects of the Russian Federation. We have immense territory, and the subjects that we have subjects that are bigger than European countries. And the retail markets of intellectual energy sector, these are local markets, and we should work on the practice of the creation of the management systems, information systems at these markets, and the interfaces of cooperation with a united system. That is the key point if we talk about the integration of intellectual energy, not only about some other technologies. And if I try to sum up all today's discussion, I would say that distributed energy is in wide and innovation, but in history everything started with distributed energy, but now it is innovation, and in order to not to make this innovation limit everything else that was previously. We need a targeted state policy on the integration, not only on the prohibition. The policy of prohibition will lead to an effect of destruction, may lead to an effect. Thank you. Summing up, and I would like to say that my conclusion for today's talk is that it is important to shift to new practices. Smart energy is not only new industrial technologies, not new information technologies, it is new social technologies, social innovation, it is new business models, new thinking, new responsibility of energy responsibility. And here it is important to understand it. And as we mentioned, that's a new energy policy and new solutions at the state level. And I think it is very important to understand it. When we talk about smart energy, we're talking about social innovations.
I'm just optimistic. I heard a lot of interesting discussion around the table here, and from different people who represent different entities. And it seems that naturally it's difficult, especially in where you don't have internal competition between power utilities. But I think that those discussions should continue, and probably the best way for such a large country like Russia is to start with some pilots, maybe 2 or 3 pilots, where people can feel a bit more comfortable, can try the new technologies, and this can be actually a major drive for internal innovation for new industries in Russia to also use their new technologies, develop new technologies, and afterwards export it outside also of Russia and actually use it also here.
Well, as my summary, I would like to say, I would like to add to Igor's words about the scale of the country. I think that there's no unified concept of smart energy for the whole Russia. Every federal district has its own, if we're talking about the strategies of development of the generation and networks. And as for United, that's energy saving for the whole country. I will add up to the words of Dmitry. I think that social innovations take into account the fact that when we talk about the future of the energy sector, or when will it come, we think about 10 or 15 years. It means that 15-year-olds will be 30, and they will define the image and the consumption and the management of what happens in the energy system. And in this aspect, I have hope that young people, these young people, rather than we who are 40, they are more involved in all the world trends that we currently have. Even if they don't think about energy sector, it will be easier for them to step in to the new era of energy, considering their social behavior as well. And many technologies are based now on that. And if we talk about the fact that Russia can have now, we can say that we have large installed capacities now that are not always used in an efficient way, and so it is quite complicated. But optimizing what we have currently, using the information technologies that are in access today, Internet of Things, for example, that will be implemented in the near future, big data, the analysis of what we have. We have a great treasure, and we should use it in a rational way. That's it for the near future, what I would like to happen. Well, for me, the main conclusion is that, and I think everyone would agree to that, I think that smart energy, as a monitoring of different elements of energy system and technology of the management of energy flows, will continue to develop in all elements of technological chain, both in production and transmission and in consumption. And this trend for development, I think it is regardless to what the state will do. The state can either accelerate or slow down, but the process of intellectualization of the situation, it is inevitable, I think. Thank you. Well, I'd like to say that the conclusion of the session is in the name of our round table. That smart energy is green energy, first of all. And here, I think that green is not just using renewable energy, but also a more efficient use of traditional energy. And I think that this comprehensive approach I've talked about, it is necessary here. And the elements of this comprehensive approach that the colleagues talked about, virtual stations that are currently used, demand response, these technologies should be analyzed. And maybe an important element here is that our regulators should stay away from this process, from these facts, and would close their eyes on the processes that are already happening against what happens. And they should try to analyze and what can they do to help and how to use this comprehensive approach here. And it seems to me that it is important. And as for the regional experience, I think we can note here that there are positive news from all sides. Recently, I've read in a digest that Murmansk region had carried out a competition in attracting organizations for the construction of hybrid electric stations. They are less than 1 megawatt, but still there is a movement towards this sphere, and they accounted that the use of combined technologies like wind or sun, the accumulation and diesel generators, they already can be used. and we since some kind of hysteria on the market about the prices for oil, and we see that the traditional energy stopped being so important that it used to be, and now we see the decline for half a year. But if we look at the trend of price for oil through the whole history, it is a growing one still. And so this wonderful green technology, they will be used in the future, and we will have to recognize that.
Well, looking at the world perspective, I think we know Russia, of course, is not the only country which is looking at the smart grids. All the countries are struggling with it. Perhaps drivers in this country, as I said before, are not as strong as some countries in the West, because the renewables are not very strong here, apart from microgrids. And I think the smart grid solutions are especially important for these autonomous microgrids in the faraway regions. So the main problems with distributed generation and demand response is how to realize the system-wide benefits, which are big, onto small solutions, when basically if you divide the big sum of money by the big number of customers which use them, then you get very, very small amount of money. It is easy to do it for the big power stations, big solutions, because then you have concentration of the benefits. However, let me just say the final thing, that smart grids, what discussion has concentrated mostly on distributed generation, but smart grid is not only distributed generation and not only a demand response. There are many solutions which are intelligent in terms of running the system, like, for example, dynamic ratings. It means taking the actual capacity of the line depending on the temperature and the wind rather than some assumed value. There is substation automation, how to optimize operation of the system, use of batteries in the system, energy storage generally speaking, electric cars. So there are many aspects of smart grids which we have not talked about and which just help us to run the system. And generally speaking, overall, how to summarize what the smart grid's about. Smart grid's about is replacement of the traditional solutions, which are steel and copper. It means building power plants, building transmission lines, by using our intellect to run the system smartly. In Russia at the moment, due to the excess capacity, as I said, it's not a strong driver as in other countries, but it will come sooner or later. It will come, and we have to look at them. That's why we have to look at them now, so we can use them at the time when there is a real need for it.
Спасибо большое всем участникам круглого стола, всем гостям. Действительно, мы с вами живем в...
Thank you for all the participants of the round table, for all the guests. We are living at a difficult time, at a difficult era, and I think that this sector was very simple in the past, and now the time becomes very complicated. And I think that in the run of 10-15 years, we will see how the changes will be brought about. Thank you very much. I wish you a good day.